It is the season finale of Green on the Greens as we get ready for the Tour Championship. The final 30 golfers in the FedEx Cup standings head to Eastlake Golf Club for a chance at a big money prize, the FedEx Cup. It is myself, it is Cody Williams. Like I said, this will be the season finale for us. We might do a little special episode for the President's Cup in a couple weeks. But in terms of the PGA Tour season, this will be it for us until sometime next spring, possibly the Waste Management Phoenix Open. Probably not going to do the show for the Fortnite Championship, unfortunately, in November. But Cody, how you doing? Any initial thoughts about the BMW Championship before we dive into things? Of course, Patrick Cantlay won the event for the second straight season.
Yeah, I thought the course was actually a lot of fun. I thought sometimes with these new tour venues, you don't really know what you're going to get, but it was really nice to see a course that wasn't just placating to the players. Like if you hit it in the rough, it was very penal, and there were a lot of really bad spots you could get it on that golf course. And that's the type of golf I like to watch, where you have to be dialed in, and it's not people just overpowering a course. I will say though, and it's kind of a question, but kind of a reaction. Is there a better player who is more boring to watch than Patrick Cantlay?
Yeah, I agree with you because, when he wins, I'm just like, it's fine. He doesn't really have much for personality. His game's not exactly exciting. He just kind of, trots through the course, shoots a score, and wins tournaments. I saw he actually, and this is surprising, he has the most wins since October 2020 on tour.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So Patrick Cantlay. Oh, go ahead.
Well, one stat I did see, and I can't remember. It sounds like a Justin Ray stat, but I'm not sure if it was Justin Ray. But of his last 8 wins, if he has more than 8, but of his last 8 wins, 5 of them have been on bent grass greens. So that's something to keep an eye on with him, is that he must really love that surface to putt on. So, because that's what 67.5% or 62.5% on bent grass greens. So that's something definitely to keep an eye on moving forward.
Bent grass greens at Eastlake this week?
I actually do not know. That's a good question.
Yeah, I put you on the spot with that one. We'll look into that. I mean, he obviously won the Tour Championship last year. He's the defending FedEx Cup champion. And now after the win this past week, he's now second in the FedEx Cup standing. Scotty Scheffler will be first. So let's recap our picks from last week, and then we'll kind of break down the format of the event because it is a little bit of a weird format. So we'll explain that for those of you who don't know what the format is, because our picks won't make a whole lot of sense unless you know what the format of the Tour Championship is. So really quick, let's recap our picks from last week. First of all, closest to the win. What a barn burner our closest to the win matchup came down to, eh? Obviously, there's no cuts, and if there were cuts, they definitely both would have missed them. I had Luke List. You had Lucas Glover as the battle of the Lukes. Luke List edged out Lucas Glover, finished T61 compared to 66th for Lucas Glover. Lucas Glover, not counting the Will Zalatoris withdrawal, finished second last. So you had a chance to close out the closest to the win competition, and you picked the guy who finished second last. I didn't pick it much better, but I guess good enough.
I mean, it just goes to show that you picked a guy who lost 8.5 strokes putting in 1 round, and I still lost to you. How does it, that seems impossible, but somehow I managed to do it. So I'm honestly just impressed with how poor of a pick I made.
Yeah, but you still have the lead, so you can't lose the competition. So what can happen? For those of you who don't know, we started this competition when we first started doing the show. We pick golfers who are at least 150 to 1 odds to win, and whichever of the 2 golfers finish further up the leaderboard, that person gets a point. You now, I think it is 6-5 or 5-4. You have a 1-point lead heading into the final week. So what we're going to do if we're close to the win this week is we are going to pick one of the 5 golfers who will be starting at even par. And then whoever finishes with the best score will get the point. If I win this week, I will tie it up. Then maybe we'll have a little tiebreaker at the President's Cup. Maybe that's what we'll do. But if you win, obviously you win a free round of golf on me. So it all comes down to this week close to the win. Hey, in terms of competition, nothing beats this. It comes down to the last week. So that's a positive at least. So we will have our closest to the win picks. The rest of our picks last week, we didn't do great. To be honest, But it was, and we said this last week, very tough to handicap a golf event when we have zero history and zero past professional events at it, because it's like we're literally looking at like Google Maps trying to figure out like what the course is going to play like. We didn't even know what the layout was because they had two courses and it is a mix of both. So it was a tough week to handicap. Top 20, I had Brian Harman plus 180. You had Cam Davis plus 175. They both finished T35. My only win of the week was Joaquin Niemann to finish in the top 10 at 3-1. He finished T8. You had Tom Kim, our boy Tom Kim, to finish in the top 10. He finished T54 and he fell out of the top 30, so he will not be in the Tour Championship this year. But hey, in terms of a guy who didn't even have his PGA Tour card, he earned it. He got his first win, even though he's not in the Tour Championship. Pretty successful season for the young 20-year-old South Korean. Top 5, I had Cam Young plus 550. He finished T23. You had John Rahm. He finished one stroke outside the top 5 at T8. And then, of course, you had Xander Schauffele to win 18-1. I had Will Zalatoris 14-1. An injury caused him to withdraw halfway through the third round. Very concerning injury, a back injury, it looks like. Any thoughts on Will Zalatoris? Any thoughts on any of the other results of our bets from this past week?
Yeah, I don't feel like we weren't completely off the board with our bets. Like we were sniffing around the right areas. And like you said, you already mentioned, for a course that's so difficult to handicap, I felt like we had the right process. It's just, sometimes it doesn't work out when you're going in a little blind. In terms of Zalatoris, I think the back injury is more concerning for him than it would be for some players, because he's not like a John Rahm who comes out here and just hits the ball a mile off the tee because he's just a bear swinging a golf club. You know what I mean? Like he's a string bean, and he puts so much torque into his swing when he's like bends back and comes through like that. So for him to have a back injury, that really concerns me. I know he's already said that he withdrew because he wanted to be ready for the Tour Championship, but that really, really concerns me going into this event.
Yeah, back injury is not good for the sport of golf. Not one that you can usually easily get over, and not one that, that you can just kind of refresh and enter the next week fresh. So maybe we'll talk about how to handle betting on Will Zalatoris this week here in a little bit. But let's talk about the Tour Championship itself, because if you don't know, like I said, this is the finale for the PGA Tour's whole season, for the FedEx Cup playoffs. How they used to do it was like two different events. Someone would win the Tour Championship, but not necessarily win the FedEx Cup. The way that they have changed that, because famously Tiger Woods won the Tour Championship, I think it was in the last year of the old format, and Justin Rose won the FedEx Cup, and literally not a single person cared that Justin Rose won the FedEx Cup. So now how they do it is, depending on where a golfer stands in the FedEx Cup standings, they will start the event a certain amount of strokes under par. So Scotty Scheffler enters the event in first place in the FedEx Cup standings. Actually, interesting note to Zalatoris' injury too. Because he withdrew, he got 0 FedEx Cup points. He dropped from first to third. Pretty big difference there for Zalatoris. So Scheffler will start at 10 under par. Patrick Cantlay starts at 8 under par. Zalatoris 7 under par. Xander Schauffele 6 under par. Sam Burns at 5 under par. And then it goes in grouping. So the next 5 guys start at 4 under, and then 3 under, and then 2 under, and then 1 under. And then the golfers who are 26th to 30th will start at even par. So some guys need to play catch up. If you're a little bit further down the standings, you got to get birdies, and you got to get birdies in a hurry if you want any hope of catching the guys who are starting near the top of the leaderboard. So anything to add to that in terms of format, because this is only the 4th year, so we still don't have a ton of sample size for this new format, but I think it does kind of make sense in terms of doing it, because like I said, when Tiger won, nobody cared about Justin Rose winning the FedEx Cup, and that'd be like if like a team won the Super Bowl but nobody cared. They just cared about the team that like won like the, I don't know, some other award like MVP or something like that. So any thoughts or anything to add to the Tour Championship format?
So I think on a grand scale, like it's a smart idea. Like you said, you want the FedEx Cup standings to mean something for the Tour Championship. Like you want it to actually matter. So I think the staggered scoring is a smart idea, but I think in the way it's currently constructed, it's like too heavily favoring the guys who are in the lead, because I mean, out of the 3 years we played it, the guy who was in the lead ended up winning the Tour Championship. And I mean, you think about it, in terms of FedEx Cup standings, there's not a whole lot of differentiation between 26th and first, and yet he's starting 10 strokes behind the leader going into this
Right.
event. That seems just a little too heavy. Like, I think personally, like if you started at, you put the leader at 6 under, and then you put, the next four of the top five at 4 under, and then, you go down to even par from there. And so there it's, you're still 6 strokes behind. So you do have a gap to clean up, but I think that the gap right now is just too wide, and I think it kind of takes some of the drama away from the event.
Thoughts on this? Because every time the Tour Championship happens, I see some people tweet about this. But thoughts on turning it into a match play bracket? I know obviously that would be a little bit exciting, might make a little bit more sense. You give the top two guys into the second round. But the downside of it, and I agree with it, to be honest, as much as I love match play, it does seem kind of weird to do an entire season of Australia as match play, because if you don't know golf, you do tackle them as a golfer with different strategies. It's a little bit of a different style of play, but it is an interesting thought, at least, the championship be match play. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting thought exercise, but I'm with you. Like, the strategies for match play are just so different. And like, you can I mean, this can happen in a stroke play event, but even more so in a match play. Like, you could have a top seed lose because they play an average round and they find someone who has like the round of their life. You know what I mean? And like you
Right.
said, the entire season is decided over 72 hole scoring. So I think deciding, who's advancing over 18 holes doesn't make a whole lot of sense to determine who's the tour champion.
That is very true. It's an interesting thought, though. But yeah, it's so tough to find out what the best format for this is. Golf really built as a sport for a kind of system. Let's talk about how to beat Lake, and then we'll get into our picks, because we don't have a lot of picks for the show. Closest to the win, top 5, and to win. It's only 30 golf top 20 odds. I don't know if sports books have all finished in the top 20. So let's talk about how to bet East Lake. My main takeaway is that, first of all, it's not a birdie fest, which actually is very important when deciding who to win, because you might look at guys a little bit further on the leaderboard, guys who are starting at 1 under, 2 under, and think, I mean, 8 over 4 days, not that tough to catch up. But East Lake is not a course where you can get a lot of birdies, and that makes it harder for these guys to catch the leaders. It is very much, I think, usually the winning gross score is in like 10 under, 12 under. I think maybe even 15 under. I think Xander scored that a couple. It's not exactly a birdie fest. You got to be good off the tee. And what's interesting in terms of approach play, most holes it's either a short approach or an extra long approach, because a lot of holes are uphill and then a lot of holes are downhill. So you either got a long iron or you have like a wedge or short iron in. Very few mid iron approach shots, which makes it unique. So anything to add to that about East Lake?
Funny enough, I had the exact same note about the approach links, that it was all wedges or long irons, or you're not going to see a whole lot of mid irons on this course. The other thing is, the other two things that I would note is there's a lot of bunkers. Like, the places, some people have described it as over bunkered. It's just, there's bunkers galore at this place, in the fairway, around the greens, everywhere. And so, how players play out of the sand is something to, at least moderately keep an eye on, because there's a good chance that they could, end up in the sand, considering how many bunkers are around. And then the other thing is, I'm putting a little bit of an emphasis on not necessarily being like a very accurate driver, but being a good driver of the golf ball and not just like blasting it, because it's Bermuda rough. There's narrow fairway, so it's very penal to be in that rough. And with, especially if you have it on one of those uphill holes where you're hitting a long iron, that can be really, really unpredictable and really bring, bogey or double bogey into play.
Yes, I agree. Let's get into our picks, and then maybe we'll, if we have any points, we're talking about the golfers, because there are some golfers get into this who have been very good at East Lake over the years. So maybe we'll talk about the course a little bit more once we get into our picks here. So let's start with closest to the win. As I said at the start, for this, we're going to pick one of 5 golfers who are starting at even par. Whoever finishes with the best score down the stretch at the end of the weekend gets a point. I need to win this weekend to bring it to a tie. If you win, or if our golfers finish with the same score, then you take the win, and I owe you a round of golf. So why don't we go ahead and get started, Cody? You let me know Who is your closest to the win pick? Once again, one of the 5 golfers starting at even par. And actually, before we even list them, just so the listeners know, the choices are KH Lee, JT Poston, Sahith Theegala, Adam Scott, and Aaron Wise. Which of those 5 are you going with for closest to the win?
I'm going with Aaron Wise for my closest to the win. Over the last 3 weeks, he has 2 top 15 finishes, and then the other one was a T31 at the St. Jude. So he's playing pretty well, but the way he's been doing it has been really impressive to me, and I think it really suits Eastlake. Not only has he been above the field average in driving distance, but he's also been above the field average in accuracy over the last 16 rounds that he's played. And even better, he's been capitalizing on that with his approach play. He's gaining about 3.35 strokes per round on approach over that span. Sorry, my dog is on my chair. But so while he's doing that, he's also been gaining with the putter a little bit, and that's been an issue for him. But he switched to the longer putter and having that arm lock, and that's really helped him a lot with his putting. So I think with the way he's striking the ball, with his DNA being that of a ball striker, and the fact that he's been a solid putter, I think he's going to, move his way up the leaderboard this week.
So Aaron Wise is your closest to the win pick. I'm going to go with Adam Scott, and he is a guy who you picked, and it seemed like you picked on caught fire. I think it was might have been one a couple weeks you're on him. He didn't perform for you. Then all of a sudden he caught fire as of late. Back-to-back top 5 finishes. His putter has been on fire, especially week. One of the weeks with his flat stick. And he's obviously a veteran. He's been around a while, and he has a ton of experience at Eastlake. He actually won the Tour Championship all the way back in 2006. So I'm just going to rely on the old vet. Has been here plenty of times before. And also shout out to Adam Scott, who's sponsored by Uniqlo. I know his outfits, people don't like them, but I'm a big fan of Uniqlo. Half my wardrobe is Uniqlo. I'm going there to shop, I see posters of Adam Scott staring at me. So I need the win. Let me go with my boy Adam Scott this week.
Yeah, I mean, the pressure's all on you. I can just sit back and hope for a tie at the worst. So
there you go. So Adam Scott again against Aaron Wise for close to the pins, or close to the win. Like I said, no top 20, top 10 this week. All the way we're starting with top 5. And obviously the odds that we are looking at include the net scoring. There are odds out there that you can bet without the net scoring. Just you can bet based on gross scoring. But for the sake of the show, we're sticking to net scoring. Go ahead and give me your pick to finish in the top 5 of the Tour Championship.
Yeah, I'm getting a little aggressive with my top 5 pick, but I think that's kind of just my strategy here is there's so little value on the board because of the net scoring. I'm going with Scott Stallings to finish inside the top 5. The way he's been playing lately has been honestly too overlooked, even with him contending at the BMW. He's starting at 3 under, and that's T11, 7 strokes off the lead, but also only, 2 strokes back of the top 5. Over the last 20 rounds, only Scotty Scheffler and Rory McIlroy have been better on approach than Scott Stallings, which sounds crazy to say, but he's gaining 0.98 strokes per round over the last 20 rounds with his approach play. And he's also gained over 0.35 strokes in every other major strokes gain category over that span. And last year, we saw Victor Hovland and Kevin Na start from -3 and -2, respectively, and they both went on to finish in the top 5 at this event. So it's, there's recent history that says this is possible. And I think with the form that he's showing right now, I think that really indicates that he's going to come out here as a ball striker and perform well. So I think he has a really good chance at pretty impressive odds, getting 10-1. I've seen 11-1 odds on Scott Stallings to finish in the top 5. So getting those odds on a player playing as well as he has, who's in striking distance, I think that's a really good number.
Yeah, if you're looking for a long shot to finish in the top, I like that one quite a bit. All the way down at 10-1. You're probably not going to find a guy with better odds with more value, especially if you're looking at recent form, like you said, over the past 20 rounds. Yeah, I looked at Scott Stallings for a while, and then I did obviously when he was in contention past week, posting some decent 9 under the radar. I am surprised that he's still available at price at 10-1. And for those of you who don't know, Scott Stallings will be starting at 3 under par heading into this week alongside John Rahm, JT, Cameron Young, and Matt Fitzpatrick. All right, I am going to go with Matt Fitzpatrick. I'm not going to get as aggressive as you are with the 10 pick. This is the guy that I've been betting on all season long. So why in the season finale? Why not just bet on him one more time plus 350? So obviously not a 10-1 pick. But he is alongside Stallings and starting 3 under par. And I mean, it's the same I keep saying all season long about Matt Fitzpatrick. He statistically is still one of the best golfers on tour. He ranks second in total strokes gained this season into this week. All he did was go and win the U.S. Open, and he still isn't getting the respect that he deserves. A little bit of an off week last week with his approach play. I think he can get back to the positive with his approach play this week. He's also one aspect of his game that not a lot of people talk about is how good he is out of the rough. He might be the best approach player out of the rough on tour, and I think that's going to come in to play quite a bit at East Lake. So the only downside I'll say is I don't believe he's competed at East Lake yet so far in his career. But he's just statistically too good for me to pass up, especially considering other guys who are at 3 under par. John Rahm and JT have much shorter odds, and I don't think that's justified. Quite frankly, I think it's rude and disrespectful. So give me Matt Fitzpatrick one more time, top 5 at plus 350.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I like that a lot. I mean, you can't argue with that. I guess like I saw Stallings starting at the same number, and he's what, you're looking at 3.5 to 1. I'm looking at 10 to 1 for my pick, and both starting at the same place. So I guess there's a chance I got a little, swooned by the value, but that happens. So
No, I like it. I mean, yeah, if you're looking purely off value, I think it's a play to go. I'm going to give out my pick to win here first because my internet has been in and out all show. It's good right now. I'm seeing green bars, so I'll go ahead and give my pick first before it craps out again. My pick to win the Tour Championship, it is square. Cody, I make fun of you all the time when you make square bets. I do this. I do the Pulp Fiction square thing. I'm sorry. I got to do it now. I've got to take Scotty Scheffler. You mentioned it. Yeah, go ahead. Do it to me. You mentioned earlier that there's been 3 years of this format, and 2 of the 3 years that the person that won it is the person who was in first place. Now, if we, 5-10 years down the line, if we see a bigger sample size and we see the winner's only done it, or the leader heading into that week has only done it a few times, then I might change my strategy. But 2 of the 3 years, and really, it hasn't. I know Patrick Hanley won last year only by a stroke, but it felt like the whole week like he was going to win. Dustin Johnson, when he was first place heading into that week, he won by a few strokes. I mean, in a course where it's not going to be a birdie fest like East Lake, Scotty Scheffler needs to kind of collapse. He needs to implode in order to give other guys a chance. And I tried to fade him last week. I thought it was the time to fade him. We both mentioned that, and then he just went out and had a fantastic week. And what did he finish? T5 or something last week? Or He was right up there at the top of the leaderboard. So we're talking with the number 1 ranked golfer in the world. I should have assumed that the number 1 ranked golfer in the world is going to be able to bounce back. That's what he did. He figured out his putter. He gained strokes putting last week. He had the 4th most strokes gained approach in the field last week. He has that 2-stroke lead on Patrick Hanley, a 10-stroke lead on the guys who are coming to the even par. It's a square pick. I think it's the right one. I'm not going to overthink it. Scotty Scheffler plus 225.
No, you're 100% right. And the other thing, like, I went a different way, obviously, but the other thing about Scotty Scheffler is he's a scary player to try and chase down because he doesn't put himself in a lot of mistake-making positions. We saw that at the Masters. Like, he and Ted Scott have that trust in one another that they don't make the error on top of the error that leads to big numbers. And so him starting this tournament with a 2-stroke lead is a scary proposition. So it is square, but you're probably right. It is probably the right play.
Yeah, for sure. So Scotty Scheffler is my pick. Give me your pick. I will say this was going to be my pick. You were up at like 5 a.m. this morning submitting picks into our group chat, so I couldn't steal them from you. So go ahead, give me your pick to win the Tour Championship.
Yeah, I had to get him in early because I knew you were probably going to go with Xander Schauffele to win, so I had to get that as my pick. Xander's history at East Lake is just ridiculous. I mean, people talk about how good Rory's been at East Lake. Xander's honestly been better. He had the lowest score to par in terms of like the shadow leaderboard, as they call it, at East Lake in 2020, even though he didn't end up winning the Tour Championship. But even in this new format, he's never finished outside the top 5. and he also won the Tour Championship in 2017 under the old format. And he's coming off a week in which, I had him to win, and he was in contention basically all week. And it's because he has that well-rounded tee to green game, and he also putted well. But he gained 0.75 strokes per round off the tee and 1.4 strokes per round on approach. So he's displaying the type of form you need to succeed at Eastlake. And like I said, his history here is phenomenal. I mean, he's only, 4 strokes back. If Scotty doesn't go out and make some birdies, Xander knows how to make birdies. I think you said it. He was 15 under here when he won the Shadow Leaderboard. So he can score at this course, and it's a course that doesn't give up a whole lot of birdies. So that gives him an advantage. And I think, the odds that I sent in were plus 600. I've since seen him at plus 800, which obviously is more value. So I think for a player with his type of history who's showing the form, he's won in his last 4 starts. And so I think that Xander Schauffele is the play this week.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, of course I like it. We even talked about it last week, how dominant he's been at these throughout his career. I'm looking at odds to win the gross scoring, the shadow leaderboard, and he is 8-1 there. So I think that's how I'm going to play it. Because if he does win the whole thing, I mean, he could win the whole thing and not win that, but he's won that in the past. He could finish with the best gross score, but then if Scotty Scheffler, still has a good tournament, he could, not win the Tour Championship. So I think whatever way you want to bet on Xander Schauffele this week, I think you got to bet on him one way or the other. Good form, fantastic history at this course. Xander Schauffele is certainly got a target this week.
Absolutely. I mean, if nothing else, I'm going to be targeting him in a ton of matchups.
Now, so there are our picks for the Tour Championship. Let me ask you this. People are looking to bet on a long shot, someone a little bit further down. Like, what do you think is the as far down the leaderboard as you think has a chance to actually catch up to Scotty Scheffler and win the whole thing? Like, can the guys at 3 under win? Can the guys at 2 under win? Can the guys at 1 under win? Like, what would be kind of your cutoff for looking for a winner if you're looking for a long shot?
I mean, I think it honestly comes down to the names that you're looking at in these regions. Right. I think that kind of determines it more than anything. I'm hesitant to say that someone in the 3 under range could win, but at the same time, when I'm looking at a group that has Rahm, JT, Fitzpatrick, that's a pretty loaded little range right there. So, I mean, if you're going to sprinkle on them, their odds are probably suppressed a little bit because of their name value, but I mean, that's worth a look. I also, it's hard to look at the 4 under range and see, Cam Smith and Rory sitting there. And then Finau had a bad week last week, but with how he's been playing recently, you can't overlook him. So I think if I was looking for a long shot, I would be tempted by the 3 under range, but I would probably say the 4 under range is what we look.
Yeah, that's just about the range that I'd be looking at. I wouldn't go deeper than 3 under par if we're looking for a winner. I will say, I don't know if we mentioned this or not, but the time that it wasn't the leader who won, it was actually the first year of this format, is Rory McIlroy won it, and he entered in 5th place. So he entered where Sam Burns is starting right now. But it's worth noting, not only did he win the Tour Championship coming in 5th place, he ran away with it. I think he won by 3 or 4 strokes. So it's not completely outside the realm of the possibility for one of these guys at 3 under, 2 under. They obviously need to kind of play the tournament of their lives, and they need guys like Scheffler and Cantlay to kind of stumble a little bit. But it's certainly not impossible for some of those guys to kind of make a charge here and contend on Sunday. But like I said, worth noting, the one time it wasn't the leader that won is Rory, who was in 5th place at the start. And that is exactly where Sam Burns is, who might actually be a sneaky play because we've talked about this about Sam Burns in the past. One of the best birdie average guys on tour, a guy who can score. So that's a guy who I haven't seen a lot of people talking about. And I'm looking at his odds right now, 22-1. And he's in that spot that Rory won a couple of years ago as well. So if you're looking for someone a little bit further down the odds list, not a top 3 guy, I would take a look at Sam Burns. Are you going to stay away from Will Zalatoris? I know I will. Injuries in golf. Could he be fine and go on and win? Yes. Do I want to risk it? No. Especially a back injury.
No, I'm in the exact same boat. I'm terrified of the back injury. That's just not an injury I want to be dealing with. I mean, I feel like there's a good chance he WDs, honestly. I feel like that's where we're at with that. Because, I mean, a back injury is just so, use your back on every swing.
It sounds like your dog has a little bit of a back injury there. Is he doing all right?
He has an 8 months old and way too much energy injury, and so that's how that goes. He's fighting with my other dog for no reason. He was just trying to take a nap, so that's fun. One thing that you brought up that about Rory's win that I did want to say, and it's probably worth looking at if you're thinking about betting a long shot, is, and I haven't looked at this yet, but keep an eye on the weather in Atlanta this week. Because the year that Rory won, it was a really, really wet weekend. And so people who were in the rough were not just playing in Bermuda, they were playing in wet Bermuda rough. And so, that really caused scores to get lower because when he won, I think he ended up being 13 under. So he only had to shoot 8 under on the Shadow leaderboard to win.
Yeah, that's a great point that I didn't know. Keep an eye on the weather this week. Does your dog have a pick? Who does your dog like?
He is a husky, which is a cold weather dog. So I think he is going to go with Victor Hovland, his Scandinavian brethren.
Love it. Okay, perfect. That works for me. Your dog what's your dog's name?
This is the one that's barking is Remus.
Remus is on Victor Hovland, 70-1, little long shot bet by Remus. I like it. It's aggressive.
I mean, he's young. He has the spirit of youth in him, so he likes taking the gamble.
I love it. So there you go. That is our season finale of Green on the Greens. Like I mentioned earlier, we're probably going to do a little special episode for the President's Cup. I will tell you already, I'm going to be on Team International because at least one Canadian on that team. Tom Kim, little late addition to the international team after his recent run. So that's going to be fun. I think they're going to put up a little bit of a better fight than what people are expecting. So that, I think, mid-September, so probably in a little less than a month, we might do a little special episode for the President's Cup and break that down. Cody, any final thoughts on the season as a whole? Any final thoughts on the Tour Championship before we shut things down?
Not anything other than I've really enjoyed it, man. And I'm excited for next season. A little bummed that we got to wait until, the spring, but like you said, I don't really want to handicap the Fortnite championships.
Yes, correct. And it'll be interesting to see how the whole PGA Tour and Live Golf thing sorts out by then, because there's rumors some might leave at the end of this tournament. Now they're saying maybe not. So we'll have a clearer picture of how that all goes by the time we start up next season. So yes, thank you. It's been a fun season. I need Adam Scott to come through me for close to the win this week. I'd rather not pay for a round of golf for you, but if he doesn't, I will pay up on my bet. So thank you all for watching. If you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe and all that good stuff. We've got a ton of great football coverage coming up in the coming months while Green on Greens is on the break. So thank you all for watching. Gamble or bless. Good luck with all your picks this week, and we'll see you later.